Well, welcome back. Hello again. I'm going to stop saying ums. I'll give a break.
Welcome back from the dynamic duo. Okay.
Welcome back. Thank you. It's nice to be here. Thank you for subscribing and liking and watching the podcast. You got to know Bob and I a little bit last time and understanding why we're dedicated to really clear conversations around building, preserving, and passing on wealth. So that's us. We're a little more complicated than last podcast led you to believe, but but like I said, we're dedicated to better understanding, clear conversations around what a DST is. So that is today's episode. We're going to talk about the ins and outs and details of what a DST is.
A DST, simply put, is a fully stabilized income producing property of some type, which is remotely managed for groups of investors by a third party. And again, fully stabilized asset, meaning no development risk. It is tenanted and cash flowing. And because even though you own a fractional interest in the property,
Yeah.
you do not own 100% of the property. And that's why it qualifies for 1031 exchange, where historically REITs, limited partnerships, do not, because when you someone invests in a REIT or a limited partnership, they're buying shares of that entity.
Right, not physical property.
Right, which in turn owns the property.
Right.
And it's that intermediation that has historically disqualified those assets from 1031 exchange. So I get, in its simplest form, a DST is simply a fully stabilized, income producing commercial property which is remotely managed for investors, generates all the income is rental income.
Yep.
So it is tax sheltered via depreciation and interest expense if it is levered, if
Right,
it is
right,
encumbered
right.
by a loan. And as such, it is reported out in exactly the same manner, Section E on your 1099.
Just like if you owned a house.
Just like if you owned a rental house,
Yep.
an apartment building.
Yep.
The only difference is you own a small part of a much bigger asset in a different place, as opposed to 100% of a smaller asset in one place.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's been codified in, I can't remember the IRS ruling, the number of the ruling, but DSTs are recognized as like-kind exchange for Section 1031 by the IRS.
2004-86.
Thank you. Thank you.
So that would be,
Okay.
and
Yep.
you can look that up, actually.
Yep.
It's online.
Yep.
Yeah, so what we'd like to do is get into a little more detail than just that, because for me, kind of getting into it, it was, I didn't even know what fully stabilized property was. And so I think maybe a lot of investors are in the same boat, although maybe they've managed and owned properties. This is a really different animal than what they're used to. And so it comes with a lot of rules, right? And which you don't have to worry about, the sponsors have to worry about, but it does come with a lot of rules when you do that 1031 exchange. And so we'll get into a little bit of those as well.
Well, just to step back a bit when mentioning fully stabilized, because that can be confusing. Fully stabilized simply means a property, there is no development risk associated with the property. It's been built out, it is tenanted, and it is cash flowing. So the development risk component is supposed to be absent of DSTs when they say fully stabilized.
Yeah, so the sponsor essentially does their due diligence if they're going to acquire a property from a developer, and it's industrial grade commercial properties. So properties that you yourself individually might not be able to afford. So we're talking tens up to $100 million properties, and maybe even more. But these are large institutional properties that you yourself wouldn't necessarily have in your portfolio if you've managed a number of small or medium-sized commercial property.
That's a very good and I think important point of distinction between what we'll term retail investment properties
Yeah.
and institutional grade investment properties. And more often than not, retail investors who are the majority of DST investors, folks like you and me, who own single family rentals, small apartment buildings,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
kind of thing, own and operate retail level properties, and they seldom have access to institutional grade commercial properties simply because of their size.
Right.
And so DSTs tend to be institutional quality properties from a size standpoint, a tenanting standpoint, credit standpoint, and it gives individual retail investors an opportunity or access to those institutional quality properties that are remotely managed for them that they might not have otherwise had.
Yeah.
So important point.
Yeah, it's in one of the things we like to tell people is for themselves to be more knowledgeable. Bob's or Paragon Private Capital's website, on the front page, you can go and see 26 pages of different types of commercial ready properties. So industrial properties that are ranging from I don't know, a few $1 million that they're looking for, for capping off the kind of the rest of the trust or the rest of the DST to, tens of millions of dollars available for someone to invest in. So I'd encourage people to go there. You can learn a lot and see what we'll talk a little bit about it now, but you can really see the I don't know, the complexity or the completeness or the variety of types of properties that you can invest in. So
I think completeness, excuse me for interrupting,
Yeah.
but I think completeness
a good word.
is a very, very good word, an excellent descriptor, because again, retail property investors historically have only had limited property availability, those properties in their local market that they're knowledgeable of, and smaller properties. And it's the completeness, as you just said, of DST offerings from tens of millions of dollars to hundreds of millions of dollars that provide an avenue to things that may not otherwise be available to retail investors. So that's a very good word.
And the other important point Bob mentioned, it's outside of your geography. So in today's climate, you might want to invest in, part of the geography in the United States that, is growing, right? And it has less risk of, So
how much equity did the Portland metro area lose last year?
Yeah.
What, between 1 and 2 billion? And how much equity is going to places like Florida, Tennessee, the Carolinas, Texas? If you had your choice, would you rather own property in a place money is running from or running to? Okay.
So you get to pick. So that's one of the best things about electing, if you will, to do that 1031 exchange and put your money into a DST, whatever fits you. So I mean, that's really the cool thing about I'll link education. So. For me, if students, we talked a little bit about this last time, if the students didn't want to come, or weren't exactly aligned with our institution, I encourage them not to come because they're not going to have a good time. And so I like that about the DST. There are so many property types that one's going to scratch that itch? Is that what people say? Some itch, yeah, that's right. So I mean, there's gonna be one or two or a handful. There's people that aren't picky, but you're gonna find a property that's gonna fit you, and I think that's what's really cool about opening it up geographically and in finding properties that fit you.
Well, I think your use of the word "you" it's perfect and it's profound. As an aside, and this is not paid sponsorship, Dr. Cutterford actually has a footwear company where he is in the process of creating custom shoes for individuals. And I believe the tagline is, "This is about you, not them," because historically athletic shoes have been marketed by name brand athletes. It's about being like them as opposed to you. And that's critical. In DST, it is about you. There's enough variety and and changeability, if you will, that you can make your property choice based on you, your preference.
Yeah.
It's about, as Dr. Crediford said, it's about you, not them.
Yeah. And then tagline, we had a branding and marketing group help us with the footwear company, and it's kind of a little cheeky, tongue-in-cheek, if you will, but they're made for you, not them. So we think that's going to go a long way. But same with the DST. You know, there's going to be one that's made for you, whether it's be. So we can list. We're not going to be just boring and list a ton, but what stood out to me, it could be from healthcare to senior living. If you're interested in large retail, or a retail space, right? There's self-storage. There's the list goes on. Bob, what else?
There's everything. I mean, every commercial property type, nearly every commercial property type that is available from commercial property brokers in their entirety is available to retail investors in the DST space, whether it's multifamily, senior living, student housing, self-storage, medical buildings, you name it, it's out there.
Yeah.
And so, as Tyler just said, with that degree of variation from a property type standpoint, you should be able to find something for you, not them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's good for. I mean, really, it's good for anything. It's good for shoes. It's good for.
Yeah.
I mean, this is about you. This is about, don't let some.
Yeah.
And that's something we should next talk about. That in real property, one size does not fit all. So you shouldn't let someone or something like wirehouses sell you one product, 721 UPREIT, that is good or fits all, because one size doesn't fit all. And that's the principal advantage of DST, is to be able to find that size that best fits you.
Yeah.
And I think that's very important.
I think that's very important too. We'll get into UPREITs and so compare and contrast next time with Keith Lampy. You'll enjoy listening to him, but that's the benefit. I'm a big fan of giving people choice. Some people don't like choice, but I'm a big fan of that. I've made bad choices. I'm not going to throw Bob under the bus, but he's made bad choices. And
Dude, I'm a decade older than you, so I have made more bad choices.
And I don't have a problem with that. So I do like choice, and so that allows you as an investor, to kind of put your money where you think that's going to be best for you.
No, I think that's a very, very good point, because that's something we are always reiterating to investors, that there's two components to DST, or to any property selection. There's the objective, what is it, where is it, how's it structured, that's the easy part. And then there's the subjective, because this is a totally passive investment. The subjective is the emotional part. I've got to be able to put my head on the pillow and sleep with this at night. And that subjective component is intensely personal. So we can tell you what we think are the better properties until we're blue in the face from a geographical standpoint, from a functional standpoint. But if you're not comfortable with it on an emotional standpoint, if it doesn't fit you, then it's not the right property. So that's what is available to you in DST.
Yeah, and I would also go a little farther, meaning it's passive investment. So it's going to be foreign to you. You're used to
that's
this,
that's
right?
an excellent
and
point.
So
that's a great point.
It's going to be a hurdle regardless, because you're used to being the boss. You're used to the 4 T's, and so we talked about that last time, right? So what are they again?
Tenants, toilets, termites, and turnover. Okay?
Right. And so
Do you want to die under somebody else's sink? Okay.
exactly. So yeah, that passive part needs to fit you as well. So you've got to be able to let that go in order to function well in the DST, because you really don't have any say. So the sponsor has the ability to sell, and it's not by vote, it's not by proxy, it's not by anything else. It's just
By proclamation.
it's by proclamation. And so this is interesting. So that's why they call it illiquid, because the sponsor would. So I think here's a great example of they're not doing it out of the best interest of their pocketbook. They're doing it because they want to make money as well. So whether it's the developer or a sponsor, they've realized they've put in their $50 million into this business, or whatever it might be, a retail property, and so they'd like to be done and start the other retail property, and so they offer up parts of this for you. So that's also it. But you don't get to say where that money goes. I guess they get to say where the money goes, but not. It goes.
You go from the easiest way to grasp
Yeah.
it is having spent a lifetime fixing things and controlling your investment, which is great when you're young.
Right.
But it's not so great as you get older, because real property ownership management continues to be labor and time intensive. So you go from controlling it, basically driving the bus, to with a DST, somebody else is driving the bus, you're sitting in back enjoying the view.
I like that. You're sitting in the back enjoying the view, but you're also sitting with a bunch of people.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So
It's a full bus.
Yes, it's a full bus. There's
Full bus.
fractional ownership. So when it sells, you get your pro rata, check, when that goes full cycle. So yeah, what does it mean by going full cycle? People will have heard that.
Going full cycle means that even though no DST property comes with a sell-by date, as Tyler mentioned earlier, management is tasked with trying, operative word there is trying, to provide investors with the best possible total return at time of sale. And total return is the very simple arithmetic sum between monthly cash flow already received and any appreciation realized at time of sale. And that's as much art as it is science, because there's so many externalities that management doesn't control that impact real property valuation. So that being said, since inception of the DST industry 26 years ago, the average hold period for a DST property is around 6 years.
7 years.
7 years.
Yeah.
Usually,
Yep.
given normal market conditions, meaning a normal interest rate environment, flat, maybe slightly declining, not spiking up, which we just lived through. Given a normal economic environment, usually in year 5, management will start testing the waters for a possible sale, because we've had enough time. If we did our job right in selecting the right property in the right place at the right time, for it to have enjoyed some appreciation and be able potentially to pass that along to investors. Okay.
I think another important point about that is, differentiating the sponsor with the trust.
Right.
So they're a lot of times they're the same, but in a trust, the trustee, has fiduciary responsibility. So like Bob said, so I liked what he said about they are mandated to get you the best possible outcome for that property. So
Right. And Section 1031 of the IRC is very specific that the property manager, sponsor, trustee does not participate in any gain or loss at the time of property sale. So if we're fortunate enough to pick the right thing in the right place at the right time and it goes up in value, then any appreciation enjoyed is distributed to investors
Yep.
directly with no management participation on a pro rata basis. And then you are free and single to do whatever you want after that, because the IRC is equally clear that there is no control of investor money at time of sale.
So there's three options typically. So one, you can roll it over again into another 1031, and so that's probably the most popular option because they want to continue to defer those taxes and capital gains, and so that's one. The other one is you can take your money and run. So pay the long-term capital gains and appreciation, and then get out and do something else strategic with the money if you want. But then the last one, which I think Bob alluded to, are these wirehouses that try to convince you, that the 721 UPREIT is the best place to put it. We'll get into a lot of that next time, but essentially you have stopped the 1031 exchange from ever happening again. That's your last possible turn into
It's your end game, because you cannot 1030 once you Section 721 of the IRC allows you, after doing a 1031 exchange into an individual DST property that is tied to an UPREIT, Section 721 of the IRC allows you to do a tax-free exchange 2 years after that into the REIT. But that's your end game, because you cannot exchange out of it. All you can do is sell your shares.
Operating unit.
Not to get too far down in the weeds, but when DST property is absorbed by an UPREIT, your fractional interest automatically at no cost changes into operating units of the trust and remains so until such time as you want to cash out all or part of that. Then they become shares of the REIT, and they are sold back, or not sold, they are redeemed at set intervals at a set price by management, because it is not a publicly traded product. So that's your end game. You can't 1031 exchange out of it. You have to take your money, pay your taxes, and go. So it can be part of the solution, particularly if you are desirous of a liquidity tranche for your capital. Tranche meaning partial portion, in terms of you being able to determine the timing of the liquidity event and not management. But it is certainly not all of the answer. And in our humble opinion, the wirehouse guys that are schlepping this product very aggressively now are committing errors of omission, not commission. They're not telling their investors anything that is not true. They're simply not telling them the whole story in terms of what all is available to them, because DST properties are not available on most wirehouse platforms.
Right.
So you're only getting part of the story rather than the whole story.
Yeah, and I think that's a good segue into, the risk of a DST. So people talk about the illiquidity. I don't know. Usually, if you're an accredited investor, you've got an income stream already. It's not like you're putting all your money into it. It's a partial. Who knows whatever you're going to decide to put in. So you've got other funds that are more liquid. Illiquidity or liquidity is just defined as how soon can you get your money back. So. And if you were to look at the money market, if you're going to look at a CD, if you're going to look at a T bill, those are highly liquid because they only last for commercial paper, whatever it might be, for a few months up to a year. So this, like Bob said, you've got 5, 6, 7 years to hold on to it, and so that's what they're calling illiquid, because you can't get rid of it tomorrow.
It's commercial real estate. I mean, commercial real estate is expensive to buy, it's expensive to sell. So generally speaking, the hold interval goes for a long period of time to recover that cost and allow the property, if it's in the right place at the right time, to appreciate
Yeah.
and benefit from the tax advantage monthly cash flow that rental income historically has provided. So it's not like buying 100 shares of Amazon stock where you're just rolling the dice and hoping for the best possible outcome and changing your mind and selling it tomorrow. But historically, Wall Street does not like real estate because real estate historically is illiquid. If it's doing what it's supposed to do, you hold on to it for a long period of time. And Wall Street's exclusively binary. It makes all of its money buying and selling things. And if something cannot be easily bought and quickly sold, so Wall Street can make their money, then it is somehow less desirable. And in my humble opinion, that's in no small part responsible for the negative connotations that are associated with the badge illiquidity.
Yeah, I agree with that. Now, I'm reading a lot about this industry and just the financial industry in itself, and just it gets painted with this broad brush of negativity, and it was like when you come fresh out of other industries and you're trying to understand a new one. I don't know. I think your mind might be a little bit open, but if you're beat to death about why it's important that it's important to tell people it's illiquid. That's not where I'm going with that. But if that's all you're reading is that it's bad because it is illiquid, I'm with Bob. I don't agree with that.
I mean, we pulled that art because Dr. Cutterford has created a footwear company. We pulled an article out of the Wall Street Journal the other day profiling Allbirds, which was one of, coming out of the Silicon Valley, all wool, environmentally friendly shoes, caught the attention of soccer moms and all the techie types, and went public with a big bang, big IPO, was all trendy, and it just got sold for 1% of its IPO value. That's a 99% value destruction in a very short period of time, and that, because it was publicly traded, is a liquid asset. Okay, that usually does not happen with real estate.
Yeah.
But again, Wall Street doesn't like real estate, so they try to paint it with the most negative possible brush.
Yeah.
And
I see that in my reading and my the training I'm going through now. It's it's negative. They're meant to say that it's negative, and I guess it's just not negative to me.
Well, I don't think so, particularly with, historically, inflation's now coming back, which hasn't been part of most young people's calculus for their entire life. And historically, one of the best hedges against inflation is real estate because it's a hard asset.
Right.
So the fact that something is not necessarily liquid does not necessarily mean it's bad for part of your portfolio, particularly with inflation now a new and increasing reality in our lives.
Yeah. That's a great point.
I mean, gold's not real. Gold's kind of illiquid, isn't it? And what's it done recently, Not bad, though.
Yeah, not bad.
Yeah.
What 5,000 something an ounce?
I told myself, I'm still kicking myself in the butt because when it was trading $2,000 an ounce, I said that's at least going to $3,000. I had to buy myself a bunch of gold. Of course, I didn't. Yeah. And last time I looked at it, it was over $5,000.
Yeah, you and me both. We had. This is how dumb we are.
Yeah.
So we had this conversation a year ago, and it was below 4,000. And we talked about it 2 or 3 years ago when it was 2,000.
So I don't know if it's still above 5,000 because I stopped inflicting that pain on myself.
That's exactly right. Funny. So my good friend Bob got me a subscription to Cigar Aficionado. So now I have a whole
and your wife hates
humidor.
Me. And your wife hates me.
No, she doesn't. But this is really interesting because we talked about this a little bit. I met Bob 7, 8 years ago, and was really not into drinking and smoking, and then pretty much he got me into drinking and smoking. And so two of my favorite pastimes now is as an example. So after our podcast last time, it was like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. We went drinking and smoking, and so that's just kind of what I do now. And Bob, Heidi absolutely loves you, but that's one thing if she could do it over again, she wouldn't have me doing cigars. I have to strip my clothes off before I go into the house and, take a shower and do all those things before I can be social with Heidi. And that's, for me, it's the time I get to spend in conversation around good academic conversation around a myriad of topics is fascinating to me. So if you were to think about nicotine, your brain is wired with receptors that are the same chemical makeup as nicotine. So these nicotinic receptors are wired in the brain. So at some level, we're supposed to do that. So that's my that's how we get away with it. I can talk a little bit of a medical language and get away with smoking. But anyway, so the cigar aficionado. So Bob likes high end cigars, but there's some in here. Have you taken a look at this, Bob? There's like
No,
there's like 999 cigars that are
yeah.
ranked in the top like
Yeah.
25, and so
Yeah.
how do you how do you know? Because
It's like DSTs. It's totally subjective. It's what your palate likes.
Got it.
And we are very, very discerning and discriminating. We are cigar aficionados and we're bourbon aficionados. And some great 19th century author famously said that there is magic in that blue smoke. And there is. It emancipates your mind.
it's 100% true.
And
Actually.
if you further lubricate it with a little brown water, you're in really good shape from a conversational standpoint. And you'd be amazed at how creative you can get.
Yeah.
So we're very discriminating that way. And it's all about what your palate says you like or don't like. I've had some very expensive cigars that left me totally cold, and some very inexpensive ones that were fantastic. So you just need to try as much as you can, experiment.
I think that's a good point. We got it accredited when we were building the physical therapy program. So a couple of faculty grabbed some cigars, and we were celebrating. And that was my first foyer, maybe 15 years ago, I guess, by now. And it was like, Bob, it was absolutely horrific. I mean, it was like, I don't know.
Yeah, but that's because you were inhaling them.
Well, I didn't know.
That was a joke on you, dude.
Yeah,
okay.
I did not know how to smoke a cigar, which would be why we're doing these podcasts. So what is a DST? So what is a cigar? I didn't get that lecture. So
Until after the fact.
Yeah. But that would be one thing that was that would be one challenge that is true. But nonetheless, even when I learned, I didn't like it. So I didn't really like them until I started hanging out with Bob and understanding, you just don't buy cheap stuff.
No, you don't.
So I mean that's the so when I built the shop. I threw every part of my old life. I would keep old springs and old pieces of metal that I thought I would use, and I got rid of truckloads of just used toolboxes I got from my great-grandfather that were all beat up, and there was no necessarily emotional attachment to it or sentimental things, but I got rid of all of it and started new. So everything kind of that you see, from me going forward is really because of that. I wasn't necessarily, I guess, not tired of the old, but it was, I don't know, it was junky.
That's because you live life forward and understand it by looking backward and by holding on to all of those things. And you're trying to live life backward, and that can't be done. And so that's
Turn your life
why
backward. Yeah,
Dr. Cuttaford now enjoys very fine bourbon,
I do.
best
Absolutely
possible
true. That is
cigars.
true.
And if memory serves me well, last time we had one of our meeting of the minds, after after that he went riding out of my house on
Oh,
bright red Ducati 1199 Panigale, roaring down the road, looking like a total natural. So it's like, wow.
that would be
Okay.
true. So
I was
that
impressed.
would be true.
I was very impressed. That bike hadn't been ridden forever and a day.
Yeah, I hadn't seen it move. So
No. Until you got on it.
Well, until
okay?
Bob and I got him running. So that was a goal of ours here last couple of years, is to get. He's got 2 Ducatis, the 996, and then of course the 1199. And so we got them running within this last year, and now we're going to do something with them.
Yeah, something. Try not to fall off of it. Okay. I think, we could say, we haven't elaborated on it, but I think it's important to, we just touched on it when we said that, direct ownership and management of dirt is great when you're young. It
Yeah.
ain't so great when you're old. And so maybe we should, talk about DSTs are most appropriate when you reach that point in life where you no longer want to manage either because of time or energy concerns, but at the same time you don't want to give a third of your money to the government by way of capital gains tax.
Yeah.
That's when you go DST shopping, and if you're not at that point, it's probably premature.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we could elaborate on that a bit.
I'll use myself as an example. So if we were to come here and we'd happen to have you as a guest if you're interested and it fits kind of what we're doing, but you'll come to the property. And I was 16 years younger, and I had daughters that were into horses, and my wife grew up with horses, and so we moved out of town and bought a little place and needed to build a barn. So I thought, I can build a barn, so I built a barn. And so it wasn't, just that easy, but
Your barn evolved.
yeah, the barn evolved, and I just about pounded every nail and dug every hole. And anyway, so I was looking to upgrade. We had an old shop that was here that was dilapidated and cobbled up from just a series of series of lean-tos over the years. And I got permission from my wife, and I didn't realize how much she hated it because it was really ugly. But it was a shop, and I had my tool. I mean, just had stuff in it, old cars and
you're a
tools,
guy.
and I'm a guy, and so I didn't realize, how ugly it was until my wife said, our daughter got married here, and she says, you need to do something. So
Covered up.
So I cited it, and I kind of made it at least presentable for the wedding, and so then fast forward a few years later, she says, you need to build yourself a better shop. And so I did. And so I looked I looked across the pasture and I thought, well, I did one before, I'll do it again. And so this story will segue into, I'll ask Bob a question, but so I said, I'll do it again. And I looked, it's quite a bit bigger than the barn I built before. And so I called the person that was, I got, as someone told me about this one company, so I called him, asked, what if you dug the holes, put the posts up, how much off would I get? And he gave me a number, and then I said, well, what if you put the trusses up, because it's 20-some feet tall, and he gave me a number, dug the holes, put the trusses up, and then I looked and I thought, well, yeah, it's 22 feet at the peak, so that roof's going to be hard. So I said, what if you dig the holes, put the trusses up, and then put the roof on? And this guy finally said, what, are you stupid or something? He said, why don't you just let us do the whole thing? So that's a segue into, I was done doing those kinds of projects around the house. And so I think that's a good way into segueing. When do I, as a owner of income generating properties, give up?
With age, Dr. T, comes wisdom. And and that is the question that I think it's the hardest question for many rental property owners to answer, because they like doing things themselves,
Yeah.
and they've done things themselves all of their life. But you get to a point where you just don't have the time and the energy
Yeah.
to do it anymore, and you sure as hell don't want to give 30% of your money to the government by way of capital gains tax.
Yeah.
And that's usually when you go DST shopping. And so, prior to that, when you're young, you've still got a lot of time, a lot of energy, and you're still in your wealth building phase. It's probably not right for you.
Yeah.
But when you reach that point in life where, if you're being honest with yourself, you say, I don't have that much time left, and what energy I do have left, I don't want to continue.
I don't want to do it.
I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
That's your segue into DST.
I think that, I think I used my example
Very well.
very well, because that's I didn't want to do it anymore. I'd still be building, by the way, if I decided to do it myself. This wouldn't be here, because I'd still be
podcast would not be taking
I'd
place.
still be on the weekends and in the evenings, and anyway. So I did build the space here. So, but the structural shell was in the floor, and all that kind of stuff was done first. But anyway, early on in the podcast, we talked about you as an investor doing your own homework and trying to find out which property type fits you. That's really what it's all about. So we're going to go. So how do you do that? And it's how do you evaluate the sponsors in a way that you have some knowledge about which even sponsor to use. And so I think Bob has answered lots of questions around calls that he gets from investors. He's probably not the only call. The investors are making a lot of different calls and trying to figure out how, Paragon Private Capital fits within, their personality themselves, or if we have the properties here that are available for investors to choose.
It's a very good point. And because DST properties are passive investment vehicles, meaning you're in it and you're along for the ride, the ability, track record of the sponsor, property sponsor, is every bit as important, if not more important, than the property itself.
Right.
Because a really good sponsor can oftentimes fix a troubled property. A bad sponsor will almost always ruin a good property. And so that's why we think time on task in the industry is critical from a good decision-making standpoint, because it's not just what is the property, where is it, and how does its cash flow.
Yeah.
It's who are the people standing behind it, what have they done, what haven't they done, how well have they historically served investors' interests as opposed to their own. That's the inside or unseen part of DST. And because of the idiosyncratic nature of the industry, meaning every property is different, every sponsor is different, it's difficult to have that knowledge with little time in the industry. That only comes through long-term exposure and watching the different sponsors, the different principals in the industry perform under pressure. And that's, as the oldest retailer in the DST, again, we helped create the product 26 years ago. That's our principal calling card, is the depth of our relationship and knowledge of the individual sponsors in the DST space. And to that end, our next episode, we hope to have as a guest Keith Lampe, the ex-CEO of Inland. And Keith and I have been friends for 26 years. I met him when he was an intern at Inland in college, and he was just starting, and DST was, actually they weren't even called DSTs then, they were called DBTs, or Delaware Business Trust, not Delaware Statutory Trust. And Keith with the Inland Group, Inland Private Capital Corporation, was present at the creation of DST, and having been so and rose up through the ranks to run Inland, has done more for the product from a development, guidance, management, governance standpoint than anyone in the industry, despite the fact he looks like he's about 18. But he is an absolute gentleman and one of the finest young men I've ever had the good fortune to know in my life. And with any luck, we will have him here on our next podcast, because there is no one, emphasis, no one as knowledgeable of the industry as he is.
I'm also excited. I don't know him. I haven't met him yet. But what I like about him, especially me being in academia, he's got the view of both sides. So as a sponsor and a rep, he can see both sides of it. And so that's the value, I think, of not just the long-standing knowledge of how the length of time that he's been involved, but being on both ends, he can see. I don't know what I'm saying necessarily, but I think he has a better view of DSTs as an entirety.
You're exactly right. He has done. That's why I've always valued my relationship with him so highly, because he literally sat at the top of the DST pyramid for much of his professional life. The two of them, the product and Keith, elevating together simultaneously, so he has a better perspective on the industry, on all aspects of the industry, from property acquisition to retailing of the product, to all the lobbying that's gone on in Washington, D.C. with regard to DSTs and Section 1031 of the Internal Revenue Code the last 26 years. He's driven more of that process than anyone else in the industry. So he just has a better overview of where the industry's been, where it is now, and where it may go in the future than anyone else, period.
I think that's well said. On the next episode of the Future of Legacy podcast, Bob and I are going to meet Keith Lampe, a good friend of Bob's who was instrumental in driving the DST from the very beginning. So I think you're going to really love meeting him and talking to him.